Hi everyone, I am Carmen Olana Tibbetts and I'm coming to you from the Agosia Art Studio. And for those of you who are interested in my work, I'll put up the sign because the caption thing is just crazy and my name never comes out correctly and the business name never comes out correctly. I am an artist and I make dolls. As you can see behind me, here are some of the things that I'm working on now. And I was trained as a scientist. My background is in evolutionary genetics. So I have a lot of experience being a creative person. No matter what it is that I've done in my past lives, my work is based on coming up with ideas and new ways to do things all the time. So the pressure is on to make something new, to have a new thought, to design an experiment. So I always tell people that creativity isn't difficult. Coming up with these new ideas isn't difficult. You just have to get into the habit of doing it. So this past 4 sessions, I have been having you do a bunch of simple exercises as homework. So if you are watching this video and this is the first one that you've seen in the Creativity from Almost Nothing series, please go back to session number 1 and start from the beginning because everything builds upon everything as we go through this series of classes. Every session has a homework assignment, and at the end of the homework, you're just coming up with a couple of small little samples. And I've put a place on the Facebook group, the Creativity for Almost Nothing group, where people can post samples of their homework. And I'm just going to show you some of mine. So I have all kinds of things here. I have sketches. I've done some stitch work, right? So it's only been 4 sessions and already I have a whole bunch of stuff. And then I have, all of my little stitched samples. And it's kind of interesting. It's only been 4 days, 15 minutes a day. And I have a whole pile of little images. They're simple, it's just lines and curves, but it's interesting because after only 4 sessions, you have this collection of all kinds of interesting things. So many artists start the day with a sketch or a stitching sample or something like that. And it does a couple of different things. It's a way to put your mind into a place where you're going to be working on whatever you're going to be working on that day. Often it's not a specific task. So it's just, maybe if you're a writer, you could write a couple sentences every day. They don't have to make sense. They don't have to follow one another in some sort of narrative. You just practice whatever it is. You just do whatever pops into your mind. So if you draw, just draw a simple sketch, or maybe go outside and look at something, pick some random thing and sketch it. The point is that you do some little thing every day, right? That's it. So this sort of practice puts you in that mental place to prepare you for what you're going to do, but it also is kind of a mindless task. The idea is not to think about it and say, oh, okay, today I have to write 50 pages, or today I have to make a whole painting. The point is just to do some little thing, some little bit, and this mindlessness, when you give it up, you just give yourself a place to be relaxed and just work on something that has no deadline, no pressure, there's no purpose for it. It just is what it is. This is a place that lets your mind wander. It can just wander around and, while you're doodling, while you're painting, while you're stitching, things pop into your head. And remember, we've been talking about paying attention to what pops into your head, noticing what it is that comes to you. And then when something comes to you, jot it down, right? We're not in the habit of doing that kind of thing because we think that those little things are insignificant, that those little things have little or no value. But those little things, when you put them all together, can become a very large, interesting, important thing, okay? So you have to think of this daily practice as an investment in your future work, Okay, so not only does it get you into the whole purpose of practicing whatever it is you do, working with your hands, your eyes, your mind, doing that sort of mental thing, paying attention to what you're doing, but it's also an investment in your future, because then you will have this set of samples that you can go to as a source for inspiration. So it is a source for new creativity in the future. So you're investing just a little bit every day. You know, it's the same sort of thing they tell you, you know, save just a couple dollars every week, and after 50 years, you're going to be a millionaire, right? It's that kind of thing. You do some little thing every day, and in the long term, it pays off in big rewards. So when we think about this sort of thing, you know, it's like, well, you know, it doesn't really work. A few years ago, like when Instagram started to be really big and YouTube and all that, there were a bunch of artists that thought, you know, well, you know, I'm going to challenge myself to be creative. And there was a big push, well, maybe not a push, but it became fashionable to do this thing where you do one thing a day, right? If you're a photographer, you just take one picture a day. And there was one man who took a picture in his garden every day. Right? And there are scrapbookers, there are quilters, you know, you just do one block a day, or one page a day, or one sketch a day. And then at the end of the year, you realize you have this entire body of work. So we don't give value to these little jobs, but then you can look back and see this big thing. And the great thing about this little bit every day is that everybody can do it. It doesn't matter if you're beginner or you're professional. It doesn't matter if you're starting something new. So maybe you are an engineer and now you want to learn how to knit. You just do a little bit every day. And anyone can do that. Just 15 minutes a day, 5 minutes a day. It doesn't matter. Okay? It's a doable chunk of time. And you have to learn to not criticize what you do. Just do it and let it live as it is. It had a purpose. Remember, it's an investment in the future. And it's really doable because it is just a small amount, right? So another thing to do is, if you don't want to say, okay, I just can't sit down for 15 minutes a day and do whatever. I don't have the ability to do that. I don't have the time. My schedule doesn't work that way. Okay, fine. Find some way to carry something with you, so that when you do have little ideas, or you see something that inspires you, or you have an idea about some new combination of things, just have a little piece of paper or a pencil, or, you know, everybody's on their phone these days, jot it down. Okay, every time something comes into your head, every single time, just jot it down. Right? And we don't value those little ideas that pop into our brains. They just pop out and then they seem to float away. But if you went back and you looked at all of the little ideas that you had at the end of the week, it would be a lot of stuff. And you would realize that you are actually a pretty creative person. But it's never been all right there in front of you at one time. Okay. So, you know, having all of that there together is great. You're like, well, you know, it doesn't get me anywhere. And one of the problems is that in our society, we value the big work. We value the big completed thing, right? People want to do the entire knitted sweater. They want to redecorate the whole room or the whole house, right? They want to make a portrait of their dog, or they want to learn whatever, they want to write the novel, right? So you're focusing on this large task. And we think that everything we have to do is some process in the completion of that task, that there is a set of steps that if you do all of these steps just right, you will have written the novel. You will have redecorated your house. You will have knit the perfect sweater, okay? We don't value the little bits that don't seem to have a purpose, right? So what good is it doing all of these little stitching samples? I mean, I'm not making a quilt out of these. I'm not going to use these for anything in particular. It's not like I said, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to make 50 little fabric pins that I can sell, right? No, I'm just doing these just to do these. And then, of course, you know, I've got all of these little sketches. I didn't have any purpose in mind. It's not like, you know, I'm going to publish a book about little sketches. I mean, I could, but that wasn't the goal. It was just a set of exercises of lines and curves. And I bet a lot of you are like, oh, you know, these assignments are dumb. What good does it do? I heard a story on the radio a while ago about a man. He happened to be a writer, and his father made movies. And they were not great movies, but he made a lot of them. And he was known for just cranking them out. Okay, not even B movies, but like C movies. But he was famous, and people were just like, where does he get all of his ideas? Because he made movies after movies after movies after movies. They were never really a huge financial success, but there were so many of them. So the movie maker died, and his son came into the house, the writer, and he was going through his father's things after his father had died. And what he found was stacks, collections of index cards rubber banded together just everywhere. And what they were just short descriptions of a scene. So whenever the father had some idea for a scene, oh, it would be interesting to have a dog walking under this kind of tree, and you know, whatever it was, he would just jot it down and then stuff it in his pocket or put it in a pile. So he literally had hundreds of these examples of scenes. So then when he went to make a movie, all he did was go through his set of note cards and say, no, oh, that's interesting, right? And then he would just pick a series of them and string them together in some way, and there was his movie, right? So all of these little things that didn't have a purpose, an intentional purpose to do them, they became useful. They were his source of information. So the small stuff is incredibly valuable to us. And so you need to learn how to accept the value of a set of little sketches and appreciate that you did this, and this can be the source of something interesting in the future, okay? So I have, and many artists have, sample books or maybe collections of little bits and pieces. And it's kind of crazy, you know, if people like to collect little things, right? And those collections, those sketchbooks, those scrapbooks, they have a lot of value because they're things that have inspired you, maybe things that you've made, as we've been doing with the homework assignments here. And they're really important because they allow you to practice. That's a big thing. It's practicing noticing something and then saving it, or maybe it's simple as practicing the work itself. Okay, so if it's something stitch work like this, I'm just practicing. I could just pick up any kind of scrap of fabric. Maybe it's different kinds of fabric every day. Maybe it's different kinds of threads, different colors in combination. And I'm going through the mindless practice. I just pick up whatever is at hand and just stitch a few samples. So my hands learn to work with my tools and materials. So that in and of itself is incredibly valuable. It's also important to learn how you feel when you're just working. And that's something that I've brought up again and again and again. Okay, so the practice, that's a big thing, right? And then it's also that source of inspiration that you can go to later. So when I am working in the studio, I work full-time as an artist, and I try to keep normal hours, 9 to 5 kind of thing. The first thing I do in the morning is I do some kind of handwork. So I either stitch a few lines, I have a quilt and a quilting frame over there, or I might be crocheting samples, or I might be playing with beads or something like that. And they're not tasks that are directed towards the completion of an artwork, like something like this, right? It's not like, okay, today I have to come in and make 10 dresses, or today I have to come in and I have to wash all this fabric, or I have to dye all that wool. It's not something that's on the list of things to do. It's just some little set of things. And sometimes I just don't want to do anything, or I don't have any inspiration. I know I have to make a whole new body of work, but I don't know what to do. So the point is you have to do something. So I have a whole series of things that I turn to when I can't think of something to do. And so I will go through, I have books on crochet patterns and beadwork and stuff like that. And I just sit around and I make samples. So I have tons of all these samples. These are all beadwork and fabric manipulation samples. Here's a set of crochet lace samples. I have lots and lots of those because I do tiny things. Here's a whole set of stitch samples from my sewing machine. So I'll just sit down and I'll just say, okay, I'm going to play with this. And when I am thinking of things to do for my fabric art, one of the first things I do is I flip through all of my sample books. So I have this set of things that were created by me. It's useful to have books and things online that you can go to, like Pinterest or Instagram. But isn't it great to have your own set of stuff that you can turn to for your own inspiration? You are inspired by yourself, by the own work of your hands. That's fantastic, okay? So this is something that I really encourage everybody to do, and it's hard. People don't want to value those little things that aren't directed towards a purpose, but they are very, very important. So look at all of these drawings that we've been doing for this past week. And so what I want you to do for your homework this week is we're going to start working with all of those samples that you have created. So you can go and look at things that you've done, but you can also go online to some of the photo albums that I have on the Facebook page and look at some of the things that other people have posted. And what I want you to do is look at some of those samples, and this is going to be mainly a sketching exercise. But if you want to try it from a stitching point of view, that's totally fine. What I want you to do is 3 different things. I want you to go and look at the samples that other people have posted, and I want you to pick 3 that jump out at you for whatever reason. Okay, doesn't matter what the reason is. First of all, I want you to use one of those samples to then draw a monster based on that sample. And I'm going to leave the interpretation of that up to you. Okay? However you interpret that, I want you to draw a monster using the first sample. The second sample, I want you to sketch a flower. Okay? That's a universal object that everybody knows something about what a flower should look like. So I want you to pick a sample and I want you to use it as the basis for a flower. And again, I'm going to leave the interpretation of that up to you. Okay, this is all about coming up with ideas. Don't stress about it. Just start doodling. Just go wherever your mind and your hand takes you. Okay, the third one, I want you to find a sample from the things that people have posted, and I want you to use that as the basis for drawing an animal. Okay, it can be an imaginary animal. It doesn't have to be a real animal. It can be anything that you want. Okay, so you're going to be finished. Homework number 5 is 3 different things: a monster, a flower, and an animal. All right, so this is session number 5. It's Friday today, so you have the whole weekend to think about that and work on it. Next week, we're going to start the last 5 sessions, and we're going to start talking about more complexity in your work. We started really, really simple way back in the day, just lines and curves, and we're building. So now we're going to be using all of those samples in more complex ways, okay? And the point here is to realize that small things can build up and become something big and interesting. And it's all the stuff that you've been doing and you've been working on, all right? So I will see you next week. Until then, stay home, stay healthy. We're all working together to keep a positive attitude, and I'm hoping that this series is useful to you in some way and that you can use these skills to foster creativity in your life in some way that has meaning to you. It doesn't necessarily have to be artistic ability. It can be anything, okay? The idea here is that it's simple and everybody can practice, and we'll see what happens in the future, okay? So I will see you next Monday for session number 6. Bye-bye.